When I was growing up, I would listen to almost any genre under the sun. I appreciated pretty much every music style that you could ever imagine. However, there was one specific style and genre that I always found myself going back to, and that I still find myself going back to today. And that is just the idea of pop rock or alternative pop rock or even some pop punk, where you take some rock elements like acoustic drums, live track distorted guitars, some bass, and then you kind of mix it up with some more pop-driven top lines and vocals and melodies. Maybe you spice up the production with synths and post-production. I've always loved that, and it's something that we get a lot of questions on this channel. So in today's video, what I wanted to do is break down how to make a pop rock song, and the acts that we're going to be inspired by today are more modern acts similar to like the Band Camino, Knox, Bill Murray, Waterparks, Stand Atlantic, really anybody who's mixing some of those rock elements with a more pop-driven production style or formula. So let's dive in and let's start looking at how to make a pop rock song. Typically when I'm working in this genre that is so dependent on guitar, I like to live track my guitar. We get a lot of questions on, what the best MIDI guitar is. I think that there are some contact instruments, there's like ample guitar, but I grew up a guitar player, so I'll always just reach for my guitar. So this is actually a Fender Strat on the middle pickup, and let me go ahead and show you what it sounds like with no inserts. This is just what my DI sounds like. It's a really simple kind of 4-chord progression. So it's a nice little 4-chord arpeggiated progression, and then I just repeat that. I did double track it once for the left, and then I tracked it again for the right, and then let's engage the tone. I'll kind of break down what it is. It's the same on both channels, but we're basically using the Tone King Imperial by Neural DSP. I love all of their plugins. We're just using a compressor right here to stomp down a little bit. We're going right into this kind of combo amp, which is, their Imperial, and then they have a cab paired, but it's really just, since it's a combo amp, it is that cab. And then EQ, we're not doing anything. And then we have a little bit of chorus and a little bit of reverb, but we're not driving either of those super, super hard. We're going more for just like a nice, clean, old style kind of single coil pickup pop punk tone. So here's what it sounds like with these tones engaged. It's the same on the left and right. And then we just have a little bit of dynamic EQ down here, and then just scooping out some of those resonant frequencies. Here's what it sounds like. So that pretty much sets in stone our chord progression and our foundation. We're at 130 BPM, which I find to be a really good tempo for this. Let's go ahead and add some drums because that really adds to rhythm, and then we can add a bass just to kind of fill everything in. So for the drums on this track, I am using Superior Drummer. They have a pop punk expansion that I believe they did with John Feldman, who's kind of like the king of all pop rock. He did pretty much every band when I was growing up and still does a lot of the acts that I mentioned earlier. And I'm just using the pop punk kit from there. And what I've done is I've actually multi-tracked this out. So if we go to the mixer, you can actually see that we have these assigned. So kick is going out 3-4, snare is going out 5-6, hi-hat's going out 7-8, etc., all the way down. And I'm doing that so I only have to use one instance of Superior Drummer. And then in Cubase, all you need to do is you can click right here and you can activate your outputs and you can make new stereo outputs. So this is all under one VST. However, I can process each one of these as an individual audio track. So I'll go ahead and show you what the drums sound like, and then I'll kind of show you how I mix them, especially since we're doing kind of like a multi-track out, like you would mic and mix a actual kit. So here we go. Here's what our drums sound like with that guitar. So let's take a look at the drummer. We have a kick right here, and for the kick, we have quite a bit of processing. Here's what it sounds like raw. I'm using the Pawn Shop compressor by Dan Corniff Audio. This is just really, really good to add a little bit of punch. I have it on the mod kick preset, and then we're adding a little bit of R bass just to get some extra low end thump, because typically with acoustic kicks like this, I like to either layer them with a sub kick or add something like that. And then we're doing a little bit of EQ, so scooping some of those pokey mids out, adding a little bit of sizzle, and then just adding a little bit of extra thump. And then lastly, I'm adding a gate to get rid of any of that extra room noise because we're gonna have room mics. So here's what it is. Just adds a nice little punch. And then for the snare, here's what it sounds like raw as well. We're doing a little bit of EQ in Cubase, so boosting that kind of, fundamental at 211, and then adding a little bit of sizzle. Again, we're going back to the Pawn Shop compressor. I use this on pretty much every acoustic snare ever. It's the Snare Smash preset, and it sounds like this. It adds that nice little bit of thwack and transient. Then we're going to do some OTT so we can get this to be a little bit brighter, because it's just going to add a little bit of saturation and expansion on that top end. And then we're going to add Knock by Decap. I use this on drums all the time as like a clipper and just to add a little bit of punch and saturation. And then here's what the snare sounds like now versus this. And as you can hear, all of these drums are super dry. That's because we also have a room mic and overhead mics. So we can go to the overheads. All I'm doing for these is adding a little bit of sizzle and high mids with the mag EQ and taking out some of those low kind of 160 mids. And then other than that, we have an ambient mic. So for this one, I wanted to tighten it up because it was feeling a little bit loose, especially as we have a compressor on the actual song. So we're using the thwack preset from the Corniff Pawn Shop compressor. And then I'm actually doing a transient designer to take away a little bit of the sustain in this room so we can have something that feels a little bit shorter and a little bit punchier. And then for the trash, we're just using some EQ. And then the last one that we have is this comp. This is basically their version of parallel compression and saturation. And I'm just adding a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of saturation with Saturn. And here's what it sounds like all together. So we have this nice, bright, super punchy drum. We have that guitar underneath. I'm gonna go ahead and layer a bass under, and this is where we're gonna kind of shift it more to pop. For the bass in this verse, I wanted to use something that was a little bit more electronic so it didn't feel totally just like a rock song. So we're using a preset from our Vital Pack Synergy called Swinger Party, and instead of being a triplet, I just took it to a standard quarter note, and it's just this nice galloping bass. Now let's go ahead and fill out the rest of the verse with some synths and some extra guitars for the second half, and then we can move on. To thicken this song up and just add a little bit of extra movement, I'm gonna add these little skippy synths. Just using this fast-moving fillers preset from our Synergy Pack and Vital. By the way, if you haven't downloaded Vital, it's a completely free synth. And then once you download it, if you're looking for presets, we have this pack called Synergy that we have a ton of amazing presets. You should definitely check that one out. So we're using that for the first half of the verse, and then for the second, once it kind of builds up, we add this little brass pad just to add a little bit of mids. So while we're doing that, we also start to add these second guitars in the second half. So we have one guitar on the left. And then I actually did a whole different riff on the right side. So we're gonna have a guitar on the left and a guitar on the right, and it kind of makes it feel super wide and super ambient. So that's all that we have going for the verse. What we did too was for the drums of the second half, instead of doing the standard like, I went ahead and sped it up a little bit, so we're adding in some accent snares, so you'll see those right here. And with the extra production, it just really makes it feel like a B part of a verse. So now all together, we have something that sounds a little bit like this for the second half of the verse. And then let's go to a pre-chorus. For the pre-chorus, I kind of want to do a big dropout. So it's something that I've heard in like a lot of Knox tracks. I've heard it in a Bill Murray track. It's something I hear in pretty much every pop song that starts popping off on TikTok. So we're going to do a big dropout. Kind of, I guess it's going to be the hook, but it'll function as a pre-chorus. All right, for this pre-chorus, what I did is I took some distorted guitars pan left and right and then comped them down. And on that comp, I have RC20 that's adding a little bit of like bit crushing and saturation. And so we're going to just cut these super sharp, almost like a synth. So here's the guitar that we're going to use for this pre-chorus. For the second half, I'm going to leave the palm mutes in there. I'm going to have this extra guitar that we kind of used in the verse. And then I'm also going to layer up some synths and some bass for the second half of this. So it's going to sound a little bit like this. And I'm going to layer up a couple more synths and basses just so it feels really, really full. So now all together for the pre-chorus, we have something like this. Let's move on to the chorus now. I guess it's going to be more like a post-chorus after we pop vocals in, but here's what we have for the drums. So we're keeping that upbeat, kind of adding extra snares, but instead of riding a hi-hat, even a closed hi-hat, I'm going straight to a crash now, so it's going to kind of naturally build intensity. Now for guitars, I have a left and a right guitar. These are going to be the main kind of distorted guitars for this chorus. They sound like this. So they're following that same chord progression. Let me take everything off so you can hear the DI. Here's what the DI sounds like. Again, that's just using my Fender Strat. It's an American Strat. Let's go ahead and pop on the guitar tone so you can see what it is. So again, we're using the Imperial, but we're adding a bit more gain on this one. So we have the compressor doing its thing. This is pretty much where all the main changes happen. So you can see we're driving the volume a little bit harder. And then we go to the cab, nothing really changed there. And then we still have a little bit of chorus, but we took off all of the reverb, so it's completely dry. And then we have the same kind of EQ from earlier, just with a little bit of high boost. And then now we're adding a little bit of OTT, similar to what we did on the snare, just to compress some of those mids and low mids, add a little bit of top end, and some saturation. And then we have a little bit of EQ, just taking away this like really nasty frequency. So here's what it sounds like. Now we're going to mix that with this extra little like clean melody that we have pan left and right. And then we're also going to mix that with this little chorus lead that we have left and right. And for that chorus lead, it's basically the same kind of Imperial tone. We're just driving it a little bit harder. You can see right here with the volume, we're just really, really driving it, and we have some delay and some reverb, and we're driving the chorus a little bit heavier. Other than that, it's not that much different. We just have some multi-band EQ right here, doing some expansion on the high mids, doing some compression on the low mids and on the lows, just so we have this nice kind of really punchy, clean signal that's not going to start to step on the low mids of everything else. And that's pretty much all for guitar. And for the synths, we've got these in there just to kind of layer up with a guitar. So we're using a preset called Startup Square to kind of give us that big kind of bright square wave. And then we have something like this Starry Vision pad just to add a little bit of sustain and transient. And they kind of sit nicely behind the guitar. These are things that you're not really hearing in the mix, you're more so just feeling. Now for bass, we just have a little sub bass here. And then we have the real bass up top. This is just using the punk bass. We've used this bass before on the channel. I believe this is by Submission Audio, and I use this thing all the time. It's really, really good. Mix that with the drums we talked about, and you get this really nice big chorus. We're going to do vocals in just 1 second, but before we do, let me show you around some of the kind of risers and effects that we have. So we have this little reverse vocal. We have a little noise sweep and a reverse synth as well. And those just add a nice little bit of tension that builds up. And then after that, this is something really cool that I wanted to show you. It's this texture that I got. So it was actually printed from just like a cashmere sample, and then I popped on Portal by Output, and that kind of gave me this really cool granular sound. And then I just added Spaced Out by Baby Audio just to give us a bunch of reverb and delay. And it just gives us this really cool vibe. It kind of reminds me of something that like Nightly does a lot. I've heard Knox do it. I've heard Joan do it. They're just these really pretty like reversed pad textures. So you can get those by adding something like Portal, or what's their other one that they have, Movement. Anything that's gonna add like a bunch of granular kind of reverse. You could use Crystallizer by Sound Toys and then just print it and go crazy with it. So we use that as a transitional element. And I mean, that's pretty much it through the whole song. It's just a couple different noises that rise up. Let's go ahead and move on to vocals. So for vocals on this, we don't have anything that crazy in terms of vocal production. Let me go ahead and unmute everything. And for the first half of the song, it's basically just one lead vocal. It sounds like this.
It's my fault for looking past these warning signs. I had a happy ending written in my mind, but fairy tales were never made for you and I.
So you've just got some auto-tune on there to the key of the song, not doing anything important really, just tuning it like it always does. In terms of EQ, I'm EQing out almost all the low mids. I don't really need it for this song. And then scooping out a little bit here, doing a couple little notch outs here. And then in terms of compression, I did have this going through an AudioScape 1176 Rev D, and then I'm just adding a little bit more 1176 and some 2A.
It's my fault for looking past these warning signs.
And it's pretty minimal right here, but as I start driving the vocal throughout the song, you'll definitely hear a difference. And then for de-essers,
it's my fault for looking past these warning signs.
I'm just using the mono de-esser from Wave. I'm adding a little bit of multiband.
It's my fault for looking past these warning signs. I had a happy ending.
Just to kind of tighten up some of those low mids, I did add Soothe because I wanted this vocal super bright, but I wanted a little bit of extra DS in here.
It's my fault for looking past these warning signs.
And then lastly, just my last little bit of cleanup EQ, and this could probably be even tamer than this. So probably do this.
It's my fault for looking past these warning signs.
Now after that, that's pretty much the only vocal throughout the entire verse. I do have a big reverb throw here on the end of this, and we're really just adding Valhalla Vintage Verb on 100% wet with a 2.5 second plate, and then we're adding a little bit of repeater just to kind of poke that into the mix even more, and then we have some RC20 doing some bit crushing and some distortion. So it kind of gives us this nice big throw. Here's what it sounds like with a vocal.
The fairy tales were never made for you and I.
And then we just have this little response vocal right here. So somebody like Nightly would do this a lot. So it's basically the exact same as the last chain. We're just driving down this formant all the way in auto-tune, and then we don't have the repeater and the Vintage Verb 100% wet. But it sounds like this. So that's pretty much it. And then other than that, we go into the B part of the verse.
Backseat driving with your eyes closed, ruining plans.
We have these little crushed ad-libs. I'm using Tape by Baby Audio to give us some distortion. And then I'm using the 910 harmonizer from Eventide to kind of spread this out and give us that chorusy effect. And then I'm using Spaced Out by Baby Audio just to go ahead and add quite a bit of reverb and delay. So it gives it a nice cool vibe. And then I use that same thing for extra ad-libs later. And then I even use it for harmonies in this last part of the verse.
I feel like the closer that we got, the more you push me away. They say opposites can attract, I guess our poles are the same. I know everything.
And then other than that, we just have the low vocal that I always do. It's a duplicate of the lead, pitched down an entire octave in auto-tune, and then spread out with doubler. We've done this literally 100 times on this channel, but I figured I'd show you if you've never seen any of our other content. And then other than that, this is where we really start to stack the vocals. So once we have this big pull out and it's just the vocals in this guitar, we have a lead vocal, we have a left vocal, a right vocal, so it sounds like this.
Every time I talk, you try to cut me off. Now this alcohol is finally...
We've made them really dry as well. Then we've got these harmonies that come in on the second half.
I'm tired of your bullshit. You think that I'm stupid. Everything you do just kills my confidence.
We've got the low vocal that we talked about.
Every time I talk, you try to cut me off. Now this alcohol is finally setting in.
And then the last little one that we have is this little vocoder. So it's just a duplicate of the lead, and it's being driven by this MIDI down here. And I'm using Vocodist by Autotune. Sounds like this. And then when we layer it all up, it gives us this really cool vibe. It's this big vocal stack over these really minimal guitars.
Every time I talk, you try to cut me off. Now this alcohol is finally setting in. I'm tired of your bullshit. You think that I'm stupid. Everything you do just kills my confidence. Stop calling me up.
And then going into this chorus, I just have this one vocal. It's basically doing a 4-ment shift on the phrase. And so basically all I'm doing is just writing some automation.
Stop calling me up.
And then I am using RC20 for all of that bit crushing. I'm just automating that magnitude up.
Stop calling me up.
And it leads into this really nice dropout for the chorus.
Bullshit, you think that I'm stupid. Everything you do just kills my confidence. Stop calling me up.
Then we're going into the chorus. We have another big reverb throw here, similar to the verse. I just added that 4-ment control and I added that bit crusher. And then for the actual big chorus chop, we just have this. Here is what the phrase sounds like with nothing on it.
Now just stop calling. Now just stop calling me up. Now just stop calling. Now just stop.
So we have quite a bit of EQ here, and then we've basically filled this thing up. So we have the vocal being formatted down with Autotune once again. This is basically just the normal chain. Then we're going to tape, so bunch of saturation. We're going to the harmonizer to spread this thing out, give it that chorus effect. We've got spaced out, adding reverb and delay. This is just using the Space Sax preset. We've got kickstart that's doing a little bit of sidechain and movement. And then we've got our last little EQ just tightening everything up. So we've got this. And then we've layered that up with this one as well, which is basically the same thing. I just used a different doubler setting, and then I didn't shift this one down. So this is my normal format, and we're layering those. And that's pretty much the last element of this whole production. So let's go ahead and let's go back to the start. I did go ahead and pop in a little intro that I'll show you real quick, and then we'll do a full playthrough. To add a little 4-bar intro, I just went ahead and added a little brass pad doing the main chords, and then I added this little synth lead on top using the Alaska preset from Synergy as well, and it sounds like this. And here is a full playthrough of the entire song from start to finish with everything.
It's my fault for looking past these warning signs. I had a happy ending written in my mind, but fairy tales were never made for you and I. You were always backseat driving with your eyes closed, ruining plans. Yeah, we had a shotgun wedding with a rope tied on my hands. I feel like the closer that we got, the more you push me away. They say opposites can attract, I guess opposed are the same. I know everything has a purpose, but it feels like a waste. I got lost in you, now my heart's in two. Every time I talk, you try to cut me off. Now this alcohol is finally setting in. I'm tired of your bullshit. You think that I'm stupid. Everything you do just kills my confidence. Stop calling me right now. Stop calling me out. Oh, stop calling me out.
And there you have it. That's how you make a pop rock song in the style of the band Camino, Knox, Waterparks, Stand Atlantic, Bill Murray, any of those kind of acts that are taking, traditional pop rock and pop punk elements and then just kind of making them a little bit more current with production and with writing. So hopefully you enjoyed this. If you want to see more videos in this style, let us know in the comments down below, because I love working in this kind of subgenre. So let us know. Also, let us know any other videos that you want to see down in the comments below, because we do take your request. And then other than that, if you want to support our channel, you can head over to our website, makepopmusic.com, where you can check out sample packs, preset packs. We have MIDI packs. We even have a start to finish production course where I show you everything that I do when I'm hired to produce a song for a client. So we go over writing the song, producing the song, mixing it, mastering it, handling contracts and invoices. We have an exclusive group where you can get feedback one-on-one. So if you're interested in any of that, head over to makepopmusic.com. But that is going to do it for the video this week. We appreciate your love and support. We'll see you guys soon with much more content. Much love. Peace.